So
I've got the audio on now, so it's going to be quite interesting.
We'll see whether.
So what you're doing?
This is the new brand, Morgolf. They're a billet milled, single piece billet milled, so very much engineered rather than like traditionally designed to look pretty. So it's got a hosel position that's a bit different. It sits in and up. It's a bit like a double bend putter. It's designed to stop the head twisting. And the hosel's about 50 grams lighter, so you're not moving the centre of gravity to the hosel. So actually, it's a very much physics designed head. We're going to be doing other videos and things like that. We've literally just got them in.
Right. Maybe just hold it up to the camera here, Simon, just to let the guys.
So I've got a bit of lead tape just to balance it off. Let me whip that back off. So called Morgolf. You can see the hosel position there. This is the wedge, the 6-iron. All the irons have a similar hosel position.
Because there was Vass was like that years and years ago.
Yeah, it's the same principle. The Cleveland that Corey Pavin won the US Open at Shinnecock in '95.
The run up the hill, wasn't it, when he hit that shot, and then he started running up and.
Yeah, so it's the same sort of principle, and what it does that hosel position. It's like a putter. If you think it's about the gearing around the hosel, so if you can reduce that, you're going to increase dispersion, consistency. Actually, the ball speed with the 6 on the ball speed consistency is really fantastic. But it's a put up again. It's a single, so it's a modular head. Hence the name of the head's called Mod 1. So you've got the head, the face itself, the face plate is a single piece. Then the hosel's a single piece, which is screwed into the back. Then the flange is a single piece. So you've got it's 3 pieces all connected together. But with the wedges, you've got different flange shapes. So you can interchange. You have one face.
You can interchange it.
And you can interchange it.
Oh my God.
So I'm going to have a little look and just see what kind of what sort of launch and spin changes do we get if we're changing them around, and just a bit of testing on them as well. So it's it's an interesting feeling head, a very, very solid feeling head. I know James hit with them last night, and he said it just feels like you hit the middle the whole time.
I hit a couple this morning, and the ball speed's incredible.
Ball speed's very good. Yeah, it's not going to be for everyone because it looks different.
Yeah.
So there are going to be people who like pretty iron heads. Yeah. This is for the engineers amongst them. You know, so there are certain aspects, like they've got kind of a sole shape which is cambered, which is rolled a little bit more from a kind of heel to toe point of view, leading edge, because the lighter hosel means it can't be bent. So they've got a flatter and a standard hosel position, but essentially because of the hosel position, you don't need as much of a lie change as you would in an ordinary club. Yeah. But it's really kind of taking a golf's always been aesthetically designed. Yeah. You know, people want to see something that looks pretty, but we're now at a point where there's not a lot you can do within the framework, particularly on a wedge or an iron head, that within that framework anymore. So actually, the only thing left is physics. So this doesn't have a fast, sort of thinner, welded face. There are no welds on it. It's just a single piece billet mill in Detroit by a chap called Bruce Sizemore, started the company. He's been involved with several companies in the past in terms of design, and they've got some putters as well, which have got some really interesting face tread milling for grip, which again with the Quintet we're going to do some testing on for ball roll. So it's a company that are coming at it from a different point of view and saying, right, from an engineering point of view, what's best.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
At the moment they've got one iron head, but then we'll be putting in this more of a tour style iron head, essentially, not a bit wavy. But they will be bringing in some more forgiving options as well.
And so, what are you looking for when you're hitting these wedge shots here? Anything on the TrackMan data that?
Well, at the moment, I'm going to see how whether as he changed the sole shape, whether it changes launch and spin. But also feel like how it interacts through the map. So these are softish. As they kind of bed in, they get a little bit further. But just looking at kind of launch angle and spin level. So what sort of, that went a bit right, so spun a bit more, but for sort of length shots, getting kind of 20, ideally wedge shots, we try and see under 30-degree launch. Sometimes to 25, but then lots of spin. So it's quite a lot of spin there.
This is incredible. So these are the different sole plates, right?
Yeah,
effectively.
Yeah.
So instead of when I played full time, you go down to Australia and you're trying to grind the back of the wedge off, because obviously you play sandbelt golf courses in the Melbourne area. there's super shallow bunkers in terms of amount of sand. You don't want that much bounce, and then
hard base.
yeah, that's right. So all of a sudden, so what you're saying is you could pitch up there, and depending on the course you play at or the conditions that you're playing in.
You can literally say, right, these are the conditions I'm playing. This is the turf. If you're going and playing a links course, go a lower bounce. If you're going and playing a Loch Lomond in winter where it's all now try to put a load of sand on it now, but historically Loch Lomond, which was softer, you put a wider sole on it. As long as you do it before the round and don't change it during the round.
Of course. But guys, I mean, if you're out there playing in your membership,
taking that off.
Yeah. So if you're out there playing in your membership and you're on a Sunday afternoon, you're out there having a fiddle around, you could take a couple of these out, and just interchange them and see how they feel in a bunker, right? I mean, it's
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So I'm going to go to the up down. So we'll just see how it alters everything. Yeah, it's, I'll go to the wide sole, which is here.
That's fantastic. What an offering.
It's
from a company, different, as you say.
It's not interesting. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea,
because it looks a bit different. But
it's So ultimately, it's engineered.
Yeah.
Anyone who likes their physics and the science and wants a reason for everything being as it is, this is it's a really interesting piece. You're not going to be not the cheapest set of irons in the world, but they're all milled to very, very tight tolerances, and the nature of the setup means it's not, they're kind of be up there with where PXG and things used to be when they first launched before they became volume.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, interesting.
So that one's got a little bit of a wider flange, so we'll see how that changes the. Changes. So they've got two for each. So they've got wide, universal, and neutral. So effectively, you're kind of you take wide sole, M grind, S grind, kind of in theory. But they've got up and down. So depending on how you've got sort of a later bounce and a kind of more cambered sole. So the difference between if I get it out, the W up, W down, they just create some different angles. So they're going to sit. The W down is going to sit with, if I can get the angle right, but sit cambered back down a little bit more, versus that one's cambered up. So, again, you've got it's very, very, just very versatile.
If you're just tuning in, this is our new streaming service that we're going to be providing. Simon's going to be doing a live fitting on Monday. Is it driver fitting?
Driver fitting,
Driver fitting, yeah. With one of our clients. He's coming back in and having a bit of a refit with the driver. So that should be something interesting to watch and see how it's all delivered, what the opportunity is to maximise people's efficiencies and performance. And we're just going to be streaming everything that we do here, and there's loads to come, so make sure if you're just tuning in, subscribe to the channel and click the bell.
Yeah. So for me, I've always been a little shove handle forward.
Yeah.
Not great with the wedges, but shove handle forward and a bit steeper. So for me, the wider sole, where the mat's a little softer, there's a bit more pile to it. I can only feel there's a bit more resistance, so it's a more comfortable contact. Whereas the previous one, the universal one's a bit narrower. I can feel it getting into the mat a little bit more.
Interesting.
But
I've never, in all the years of playing, I've never messed around with sole plates. And to have, like, you've got, how many you got? 1, 2, 3,
6.
4, you've got 6 different sole plates.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you were educating people of what it could feel like or didn't feel like, you could have them there. Just hit these 6 sole plates and see which one feels different, or see how they feel different to you. All of a sudden, it opens up your mind to possibilities of different grinds, different interaction with the turf, etc.
Some players are going to be more suited to, and playing in general course conditions, are going to be suited to a wider sole shape. Anyone a little steeper, a little later with the hands, so more kind of laggy with the hands on the wedge, a wider sole's going to be better. So like my current wedge at the moment, I've got it's a D grind in my 56 for a bit of a heavier bounce, which will just kind of shave the crest off a little bit. And then I've got a couple of Okies at the moment, and an M for the wider sole on the 60. And having a bit of a differential, having a heavier bounce on my middle wedge that I can create lots of bounce if I open it up, and a little bit less with a wider sole on the 60 to again have the width for a bit of protection against soft conditions, but that I can kind of nip under the ball.
Yeah.
My technique was good enough on the 60. So you're generally having a bit of, over here in particular where we get such variable conditions, having a bit of versatility. You get bunkers without a lot of sand in, then you get, say a wet compacted bunker in winter, and then a wet claggy clay lie. You get around the London area here.
Yeah.
So
fascinating. I mean, they're all just subtly different. I mean, it's not like, oh my goodness, that's so much different to that one, but comparing them up against each other, you can really see the difference.
Yeah, and what's sort of interesting, your technique is always gonna out in terms of what general flight and spin profiles you get. So this is the sole shapes are going to be more to do with the interaction of the club head and the turf and the sand. In principle, a bit more bounce. You're going to find that back edge. Bring it up again from back edge. A bit more bounce. Back edge catches is going to kind of push it's going to resist a little bit more. In principle, launch the ball a little lower. If you camber it off a bit more, you can work the head underneath more. And a little higher, softer flight.
You only have to look now, don't you? I mean, a hard pan everywhere. I mean, arguably, everybody needs no sole plate when they're playing off of. Less sole plate, less sole plate. Let's say that. Compared to when in 2 months' time, when it's sheeting it down, everyone's sole plate. It would be nice to have an opportunity to go slightly less, slightly more.
The ideal way, but it's an extravagant way of doing it, is to have, even if it's just the highest loft wedge, a soft and firm conditioner. No, I don't. Even I don't do that.
No, I don't. But all of a sudden, with that interchangeable sole plate, all of a sudden you've got that opportunity. That's interesting.
Two sets.
Yeah.
Just carry around a little leather pouch with you and a screw, and it's fine.
A pouch of sole plates. It used to be coins in the pocket that the people used to jingle around on the tee and put you off, but now it's sole plates.
Now it's sole plates, but I think it's what's nice is seeing a company that's being innovative and doing something a little bit different, and it's prepared to go there and produce something that looks. I mean, it was like the Ping when they first came out, and they've softened their head shapes now because volume and general appeal, but. Market appeal, but when they first came out, they were engineered products. So Ping were an engineering company. Historically, I think it was shipbuilding components. So they wanted to engineer a head that would perform better, and they didn't want people to buy it just because it was pretty. So they actually almost made sure it wasn't traditionally pretty as a head, and it was the function that worked rather than just they bought it because it's a lovely-looking bladed head that gives you no forgiveness. So they wanted to go down the route of forgiveness and function over form almost, and even calling a putter an ugly, tells you kind of where to go with it. So it's that kind of principle that actually that theory stands in good stead from a longevity point of view, because you're just doing it because it's better. It's not just I think that the accusation leveled at a lot of companies, bigger companies, is it's just a marketing wheel turning. It's another year, another product. Even having a 2-year cycle, it's because it looks like you're taking the time to develop it a little bit more, even if they're not, even if they're just, that's a perception side of it. But I'd much rather, now there's so little left to do, I'd much rather see someone go, right, we're going solely down the performance, we're tailor-made with the composite face. A lot of people say, oh, is that just a gimmick? No, it actually physically saves a lot of weight, and that is a progression. Whether or not other companies, Tita's doing it with a thinner titanium, others are using composite in various areas of the head to save weight. They're all trying to save weight to put it in places that functionally work better.
To aid performance.
But with the driver, the laws of the game regarding the ball speeds and things, MOI of the head's forgiveness, and the laws of physics, there's they were incredibly proud of a 1 mile an hour game. So there's not a lot left. I mean, your role as a coach, is you could argue becoming increasingly more and more important because we're not seeing. You're not going to see the massive gains unless someone's got a really inappropriate club that we've been able to see over the last 25 years, because we're now at a point where there'll always be new materials that will come out. There'll always be something that they'll be able to find, as long as the cost element doesn't get too ridiculous. But there's not an awful lot left. I mean, we're starting to see with irons now. The lofts have got so strong. They've got lots of tungsten in the sole, but that drags the centre of gravity down, which launches it hard but brings spin down. You've got balls that are lower spin. No one can very few people can fly to 5 iron anymore because it's a 4 iron loft and a 3 iron spin. What use is that if you're playing to a green? So there comes a point where they can't push it anymore and just try and get longer distance on the track now. So it's through companies that go, we're going to design something that just works and is better for a certain aspect of performance. That I think are the ones. It's got to be down that route. It can't just be chasing numbers on the track anymore, because we're at a point where to get a forgiving club head that flights it is tough now. It's tough because they're all so low loft, so low spin, so low CG. The flexi faces take spin off.
And you only got to look at why they're trying to do that, because the mainstay of golfers is that they are open face golfers that are adding too much loft, aren't they? Too much spin.
No, it's because the golfer just wants more distance.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Consumer push.
But that's what I'm saying.
They hit a little fade.
The more spin they create, the more loft they create from a indifferent technique. The equipment is dragging that down, isn't it? It's doing the opposite. It's taking the spin off.
It is, and the problem is there now isn't that counterpoint. There isn't that option where you might get a retro loft of G425 and get it to 29 degrees on the 6 iron, but it's still got very low CG and very low spin. So for the golf that is lower speed, wants some forgiveness, but doesn't hit a dirty great high slice. You're almost having to look at the set makeup differently and go, okay, let's treat. You take traditional 4 to pitch gap wedge sandwich. You're having to treat it as 5 to pitch, and then an intermediate wedge gap wedge sandwich. You're just having to. The numbers game now, 7 iron at 30 degrees. It's where your old 6 iron was. Having to look at it that way.
There's definitely been. I mean, the little golf that I play, there's definitely that point where you go through the set, where you get to your 6 iron and 5 iron, you start to think, oh, this is starting to go proportionally too far. It doesn't feel like it wants to stay in the air anymore, and that's where I said to you guys, I want to go back to traditional lofts, and it's made such a difference. Like flyer lies, they've never felt more overwhelming. I mean, you even look at a semi lie, the spin is just trying to drop itself off.
For lower speed players, the problem is that then the carry distance is compressed.
Yes,
so
of course,
if you've got a 6 iron at 25 degrees, which is 1 degree off my old 4 iron, that was hard enough to hit for a scratch golfer years back. You're asking now a 25 handicapper to hit a 25 degree 6 iron, and then a 5 iron at 22, and they just end up carrying the same because it just falls out the sky. And people wonder, why can my the short irons go miles, great, wonderful, but then it all hits a buffer when it spin goes too much.
Which arguably, you look at the ladies' game, your standard club golfer lady, they're the same, aren't they? They're compressed because the swing speed is low. Well, fundamentally, if you're compressing all of the spin rates, you're just making the differential much less, right? Because they're not doing what they're supposed to do.
No, you've got to go
short irons are not spinning like they supposed to do.
No, you've got to go to hybrids and things. So you might go to a 7 iron for ladies now, which is if that's the 31 degrees. Well, so historically, a lot of lower speed, it's ladies, seniors, juniors, you wouldn't go beyond the 6, certainly not beyond the 5. But and with the spin being lower, even relative to loft now, 7 irons about as certainly 6 irons as low as you go. 99.9% of the time.
Which is mad, isn't it? I mean, I remember back in the day when people said, "Oh no, we don't do sand irons in sets anymore." What? I mean, there used to be 9 irons. You used to go into a shop and you buy 9 irons, didn't you? You buy three
Yeah.
iron all the way down to a sand iron.
Yeah.
All the way down. Well, now, I mean, if you looked in someone's, as you've just said, you look in someone's bag now with a 3 iron. I mean,
Yeah.
you just don't see
That
it.
would have been old 1 iron lock at 17 degrees.
Yes, absolutely.
So pitch wedges that used to be 50 degrees are now 43 in some instances. So, or in a lot of instances. So it's that with irons, a lot of it is just chasing the yardage.
Yeah.
Once one of them does it, the old Calico Bertha did it. 7 iron became a 5 iron lock. Well, the problem is if you don't, as one of the other brands, you're left behind.
Of course.
And so they've all had to go there.
But it's not written in the terms and conditions, is it? Down at the bottom of the page when they're publishing this stuff
That's
out.
why they
Actually,
put 10. You kind of went 10 iron. There was 11 iron, 10 iron, and double it for wedge, so which was effectively the gap wedge, but that was still a 50-degree pitch wedge loft.
yes.
So they kind of they did it, but they made it look like they were not quite adding an iron in. So
how's that feeling? That club there feeling different?
So the slightly lower bounce on the wider sole suits me a little bit more. And certainly suits the conditions over here a little bit more. I'm going to go to the narrower, kind of the neutral one. But yeah, certainly in terms of a little bit lower from a feel point of view. When you're testing wedges, whether it's on mat or turf, ultimately how the club interacts, the cleaner it feels through the ball, the more kind of natural that glide feels, it's probably suiting you a little bit better. Now we'd look at, if we were testing someone for wedges, we'd be looking at putting something on the sole, strike point, whether it's early or late on the sole, which bit someone's actually using to cushion the strike. Get that to sit on here correctly. All fingers and thumbs. So yeah, you'd see how the club head and the turfs interact, or which bit you're using to kind of work out what shape to use. There we go. And then look at different brands, grinds to suit whatever someone needs from the head. And say on the So whereas with this one, you can, if someone wants to go down the route of the more golf stuff, then you can just find a sole shape that matches. So it's not really between the different sole shapes. I'm not seeing vastly different launch and spin numbers. So that's techniques and 26.8 and on a 75-yard shot, just under 9,000 spin, 26.9, 9,000 spin. 27, 8, 770 spin. So the spin's varying a couple of hundred revs, and lies on the course are going to vary more than that. Reassuring to know that in the net my wedge game's good. Out of course, less so. But
when you got a card in the hand and it's like I haven't been out here for a couple of weeks.
Cheeky, tight lie. One of those lovely muddy ones in winter.
Yes.
So, but what one kind of really notices is how the strike feels. Sole interacts with, in this case, the mat or turf or sand. You particularly notice it on sand.
It's insightful stuff, Simon. Really insightful.
Yeah, so into getting to the narrower sole, I can immediately feel that stall in the mat a little bit more, rather than skip through. Yeah, that's why companies like Oki do so many grinds. You've got an F grind, an S grinder, D grinder, K grinder, low bounce K, M grind, T grind. But even then, we'll find ourselves using the grinding wheel in the workshop and shaping
Just
them to suit the
tweaking it.
individual. So, because a lot of them are set up really for, US is 50% of the market, so a lot of them are set up for US turf conditions quite reasonably. So they have a little
Makes
bit more
sense.
of an angle, a little bit more of an accent, a peak on the sole, because most of the US turfs are softer, are overseeded, so the root structure's a little bit less solid. So the club goes into the turf a bit more, so they're trying to stop it digging in. They have sandy bunkers, so, it tends to go on. So the grinds tend to be set up more for that kind of condition.
Gotcha.
Here we've got a thin leaf grass, we've got a firmer root structure, so the club kicks off it a little bit more. So hence the lower bounce over here, because we want it to take the contact, we then skid through rather than put the brakes on and stop it digging. So. you have a good wedge technique or don't have a good wedge technique. And you can make clubs more forgiving relative to someone's tendencies. But
kind of refresh on the roots. I think last time irons were 40.
Perfect.
Drive, I think last time were fitted. Wasn't.
yeah, so for me, that narrower sole, I can just feel the strike point on the club head, the contact, the turf interest. It's a little less consistent. A little less consistent. So,
Just looking for something that's
sorry, go 276.
more consistency in it.
Yeah, so on the narrower soles, I'm just going to make sure there's not a funky one here. Okay, there's one that's gone right, which is accentuating the spin, so I'm just going to ignore that one. On the narrower soles, there's a little kind of tolerance. They show the kind of plus minus relative to average. You know, there's 335 revs tolerance on spin, and then that last one 276. But the wider ones were the wider one with a heavier bounce 219, the lower bounce wide 150. So it's almost, you know, it's taken about a third, 25 to 35% off the variables. So that's where you kind of look at that's one of the things you look at, so right, how consistent is someone's shot with it? Because that shows that the club head and turf and player are all work.
Good. Well, hopefully you've enjoyed a little bit of insight into what we're going to be doing with our live stream. Check in on Monday.
So it turned into a pleasant chat about the world of golf, didn't it?
I know. It's insightful, hey?
Yeah,
I've
I'll
learned
look
something
forward to
this
my
morning.
Friday mornings with the double S's.
exactly.
About
It's
that regular
the
feature.
double S show.
Let us know if you want that to be a regular feature.
Comment in the
Certainly
box
do it if
below.
you like. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining in. Stay tuned for more live feeds coming your way. Hit the like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thanks for watching.
Thanks a lot.